Dazai is a depressed middle-aged man with nothing to look forward to in life, so he gives up and decides to end it all. On a cold, rainy day, Dazai and his lover are seen walking together without an umbrella until they arrive in a clearing, the raging river. This is exactly what Dazai was hoping for since the rain made the river strong enough to sweep a person away, and right now, he wants to be that person. He and Sakin came here today because they are sick of this world and plan isekai themselves by drowning in the river Kun together. This way, they will be able to keep the promise to always be together, so before they jump in, they tie their arms together in solidarity. However, as we all know, there is only one true king of isekai, and he isn't going to let his job get stolen. So despite them being in the middle of the forest, Truck Kun shows up out of nowhere to take them out before River Kun does, even if it doesn't make much sense. In the next moment, Dazai wakes up in a cathedral, and as he gets up, he's greatly confused by everything he sees around him, but he just assumes this must be the world people get sent to after they die. The style is different from what he's used to, but he will be used to it eventually. Just then, a voice calls out to him and explains to Dazai that he has been summoned here as the hero of this world. The woman's name is Annette, and she says she is tasked with guiding those who end up here. To prove that this is indeed another world, she directs him to look out this window as a dragon and various other mythical creatures are seen roaming around in the world of Zauberberg. She tells Dazai that he is destined to become the hero of this world and restore the light, but he doesn't seem too happy about it. He wanted one thing, and that was to die alongside his lover Sakin. But not only did he end up in a fantasy adventure instead, Sakin isn't even here with him, so he feels like he has broken his promise to die with her. Oh well, that just means he has to try dying again, so Dazai shoves an entire bottle of pills and patiently waits for the sweet embrace of death by overdose. Annette freaks out after seeing Dazai poison himself, so she immediately begins using magic to detoxify his body, but as Dazai regains consciousness, he tells her to stop trying to save him because it's really inconvenient. She doesn't listen to him and asks Dazai to stand up so he can fulfill his mission as this world's savior. However, Dazai doesn't even want to save himself, much less a random world that he just ended up in. He never asked to end up here in the first place, but this surprises Annette, so she asks if he happened to get hit by a truck. Dazai recalls a brief encounter with a truck, so Annette explains that she hired Truck Kun to isekai people here as part of the service she offers. The way it works is simple. Truck Kun finds someone who is depressed or deeply unhappy with their life, which is why he usually camps outside League of Legends tournaments. But after he has run over his target, they get sent to this world and get a second chance to live a happy life, and they usually end up feeling better. The fact that Dazai got run over means he must have been really unhappy with his life, so she doesn't see why he wouldn't be excited for a second chance. While she may be right about Dazai's old life being miserable, it doesn't mean he is going to be any happier in this world. In fact, he is pretty pissed that Annette and her isekai service ruined what was meant to be the perfect conclusion to his story. All he wanted was to spend his last moments of life with his lover, but she had to go and ruin it for him. Annette can't believe Dazai is so upset with her, but she's not worried about it since he will surely change his opinion once he gets to see his awesome stats. However, as she opens the stat window, she is shocked to see that Dazai possesses abysmally low health and mana. In fact, his health is so low that you would probably die from a stiff breeze in his current state. Annette refuses to believe Dazai is so weak, so she checks to see if he has some kind of broken ability to balance out his weak stats. But as she opens his ability window, she finds out that Dazai has no skills at all aside from Depression level 5. Dazai is basically a glass cannon, but with no cannonballs, so Annette doesn't know what to do with him since something like this has never happened before. Dazai decides to leave the cathedral since there's nothing left for him here, but Annette feels the need to make up for her mistake, so she grabs Dazai's hand and apologizes for having him brought to this world since he wasn't meant to come here. She unfortunately doesn't have the power to send him back to Earth, but she can't let him go and live by himself either since he wouldn't last 10 minutes outside with his current stat points. Dazai isn't surprised to learn that he's incredibly weak since no matter where he goes, he has always been a failure. Annette apologizes once more for her mistake and pleads with Dazai to stay in the cathedral for the time being since it's not safe for him to go outside. With his current stats, he would just end up getting snatched by a dragon or something, so she thinks it's in his best interest to wait before he does anything dangerous. Dazai thanks her for worrying about him, but he says her concern isn't needed since he is just looking for a place to die. Hearing him say this leads Annette to think that he may actually be different from all the others. When she first took this job, she was genuinely excited to guide the summoned heroes on their journeys, but since most of them were depressed elite players, they were so annoying to be around that she ended up hating her job. Her tasks have basically devolved into ego-stroking the heroes to get them to accept the mission, but it's different with Dazai. As he is about to walk out, Annette drops her staff and chases after Daze, pleading with him to at least pick a profession before he leaves, but Daze turns to her and says there's no need for that since he's a natural-born writer, and that's all he will ever be. With that, he closes the door behind himself and says goodbye to Annette. And once Daze is gone, Annette falls to the floor and begins thinking about how Daze is the exact kind of person she has been waiting for. Meanwhile, Daze has made it to some plains outside and is trying to get directions from a sign, but he doesn't understand a single word on it, so he just goes back to popping pills. Just then, he hears a voice saying he has just spotted a landmark, so 5 points of experience have been awarded. He may just be high off the pills, but he could swear that sound just came from his head, and it really hurts since he suffers from migraines, so he tries to get it to stop. However, celebration music goes off in his head as he has now gone up to level 2, and the resultant migraines make him want to die even more. Just then, he hears a girl scream for help nearby, so he turns around and sees the girl getting assaulted by a death tree. She notices Daze and asks him to help her since she'll be killed by the tree if she doesn't escape soon, and the tree seems to be wrapping her and branches more and more by the second. Daze just stands there as the tree fondles the girl, and he seems to be enjoying the show. So much so that he asks her if she's okay about him writing a novel about this later, but the girl doesn't care about any novels and just wants Daze to rescue her already. To his credit, Daze gives it his best shot, but he can't reach her at all, so he just gives up. So the tree grabs him by the neck and hangs him up next to the girl. There's nothing he can do about it now, so Daze just introduces himself to the girl while he's hanging and says they are probably not going to last much longer. The girl blames Daze for the predicament since he couldn't do anything to stop the death tree. And now that they have been captured, the death tree is going to use its suction ability to suck out all the nutrition from their bodies, so the next few minutes they're guaranteed to be dead. Daze says he's happy to hear that, but this freaks the girl out because what kind of lunatic would want to die by getting himself sucked dry? As Daze starts feeling weak, he looks like he's about to bust before suddenly slumping over. The girl starts to panic thinking Daze has actually died, but moments later, the branch that was strangling Daze begins to wither away, and the death tree ends up being destroyed because of it. The girl and Daze are freed as the tree disintegrates, but Daze is disappointed that he failed to die again. Thanks to his inadvertent victory, Daze levels up again, and the girl is left confused and amazed because she believes Daze intentionally made the death tree die by absorbing the poison in his body, but she also finds it weird that Daze would poison himself to begin with. She thanks Daze for saving her, while also apologizing for calling him useless earlier, but he doesn't think he did anything special. All he managed to do was fail to die, and he isn't happy about it in the slightest. The girl doesn't understand why Daze is depressed, but he saved her life, so she sincerely wants to thank him. She suddenly has an idea and invites Daze to come over to her house so she can express her gratitude properly, and Daze sees no issue with this. So as the girl extends her hand and asks what she should call him, he says she can call him Sensei. However, as he grabs her hand, he is reminded of Sachin, and that gets him to wonder if she might have ended up in this world as well, and if that's the case, then he might be able to find and reunite with his love. He has finally found a reason to stay alive in this world, so you will make sure he finds Sachin no matter where he is in the world, and when he does, they'll finally be able to die together. His motives may be questionable, but at least he's not actively trying to die anymore. With that said, he has no idea where to even start looking, so he heads back to Annette's cathedral, and Annette is overjoyed that he decided to come back to her, so she can finally shoot her shot. However, as the cat girl shows up behind Sensei, Annette freezes in shock because she hadn't thought Sensei would find a woman so soon after going outside for the first time. He says he has a question to ask Annette, so she prepares herself, thinking he wants to ask about her. But Sensei says he wants to find a girl named Sakin, so he was hoping Annette might have some information on that. Annette is disappointed that Sensei is asking about another woman, but she doesn't have any good clues about where Sachin might be, so Sensei is back to the drawing board. Since he has nowhere to go, he follows the cat girl to her house. The girl tells Sensei to cheer up since there is still plenty of time for him to find Sachin. But since her house is still pretty far away, she suggests they should stop at the castle town of Roth so they can take a break. She then holds his hand so that she can lead him there. However, Annette is also here for some reason, and she won't stand for such unholy behavior while they are out in public. The cat girl yells at Annette for smacking her hand over something as trivial as hand-holding, and while she's on the topic of yelling at her, she questions why Annette is here in the first place, since it's not normal for a clergy to feel the need to abandon her post and follow people all the way out here. Annette doesn't really want to explain herself, but from the way she's looking at Sensei, the cat girl can already tell that she's in love with him. Annette denies having such impure intentions and claims that she is just here to watch over the weak otherworlder that she mistakenly summoned. As soon as the cat girl realizes that Sensei is from another world, she finally understands why he was so strong back when he saved her. Annette doesn't believe what the cat girl says since she saw Sensei's stats personally, and she knows for a fact that he has less health than a Make-A-Wish kid. The cat girl still asserts that Sensei must be strong since he was able to defeat a death tree and save her life in the process. But this is terrible news for Annette since Sensei saving the cat girl's life is the first step to developing a romance. She can't believe she's already losing her chance to cat girl, but while they've been bickering this whole time, Sensei found something really interesting. It's a coffin that's the perfect size for him, so he climbs inside and says he has been feeling dizzy ever since he came here, so he's going to take a nap for a while, and they should wake him up when they get to the town. After that, he says goodnight to Annette and the cat girl, but the cat girl is mad that he still isn't calling her by her name. So Annette jokes that Sensei likes her more because he can actually remember her name. After that, Annette cheerfully ties a rope to the coffin Sensei is sleeping in and begins dragging it away. The cat girl asks if Annette should really be doing all this since she's supposed to be a clergyperson of the cathedral, but Annette is too busy trying to pull the coffin until the rope eventually snaps. As they continue walking, cat girl gets tired of having to drive a coffin around, so she asks Sensei to get out and walk on his own 2 feet. However, there is no response, so she starts worrying that Sensei might have actually died somehow. Annette checks his stats and Sensei seems to be fine, so he must just be asleep. They are pretty close to the castle anyway, so Annette asks cat girl to just bear with it for a little longer so they don't have to wake him up. Meanwhile, inside the coffin, Sensei is peacefully dreaming about his beloved Sakshin, and no matter where she is, he will make sure he finds her so they can both die together. Then a while later, they finally arrive at the castle town of Roth, so Annette and cat girl open the coffin to let Sensei out. Sensei takes a look around the town and he is now thoroughly convinced that he isn't in the same world anymore. Before they do anything, Annette says they should go to the castle and have an audience with the king, but they end up leaving the coffin in the middle of the road. Over the castle, King Thomas and his daughter, Charlotte, are happy to meet them, and since they must be exhausted from such a long journey, he offers to let them all rest in the castle chambers for the night. But before that, you would love to hear some of Sensei's pleasant experiences. Sensei can't think of many pleasant things to talk about, but he did enjoy the coffin ride here, so he tells the king that you will teach him what it feels like to sleep in a coffin. Out of context, that clearly sounded like a threat, but Anna quickly changes the subject and compliments Charlotte on how beautiful she is. The king mentions that Charlotte is actually getting married soon, so he asks them for a little advice regarding Charlotte's suitors. Thomas calls for the men to be brought in, so we are introduced to the warrior, Gomes, and the wandering minstrel of love, Otto. Recently, due to the influence of the wrath of the demon lord, the activity of monsters has greatly increased recently. However, Thomas has grown too old to deal with the problem himself, so he decides that one of these two shall become Charlotte's husband and the next king of Roth. However, Charlotte doesn't seem to be on board with the idea since she hasn't chosen a husband yet. That's why he's leading the choice up to a bunch of strangers he met 10 minutes ago. He wants them to pick who is more suitable to marry Charlotte between Gomes and Otto. But as the choice prompt shows up, Sensei does the sensible thing and says he has never met these men in his life. Charlotte's future hinges on this decision, so he thinks it's dumb to entrust it to a bunch of strangers like this, and if this is something he would do without a second thought, then he's not fit to be king. The king is left in shock, and after saying that, Sensei turns to leave while Annette and the cat girl frantically try to apologize for Sensei's actions. They try to explain that Sensei is from another world, so he's a bit blunt at times, but the king says it's fine since he isn't the type to hold a grudge, and Charlotte seems to have taken an interest in him. That night, while everyone else is asleep, Sensei spends his time looking out the window, so Annette gets up and asks him if he is having trouble falling asleep, so Sensei tells her that he just never sleeps well. Annette wants to take the opportunity to learn more about Sensei, so she asks him to tell her about Sachin. But then she notices a tail pop out from under Sensei's sheets, so she takes the covers off and sees cat girl sleeping on Sensei's thighs. She won't stand for such debauchery unless she is the one who gets to sleep with Sensei, so she does a pillow to smack cat girl and wake her up. Cat girl defends herself by saying it's cold and she's part cat, so it's totally normal for her to cuddle up to people for warmth. While Anna and cat girl continue arguing over this, Sensei gets up and leaves the room because of all the noise, and as he steps out into the hallway, he notices a beautiful light, so he goes out to look at the lake, and coincidentally, Charlotte is out here as well. Once she notices Sensei, she invites him to watch the lake with her since it's a beautiful night. Sensei agrees that the sight is very beautiful, so beautiful in fact that it makes him feel like drowning in the lake. Charlotte is shocked to hear him say this and asks if Sensei has enough problems to make him want to drown himself. But from what Sensei has seen so far, Charlotte seems a lot more trouble than him. After some silence, Charlotte confides in Sensei that she hasn't been able to make a decision between Gomes and Otto. Gomes had only recently arrived at the castle, but he is already the most reliable of their soldiers. Her father has faith in Gomes' strength, so she feels that she should probably choose him. But Otto is her childhood friend, and whenever she would feel down, he would always write a song and play it to make her feel better. She doesn't know whether to choose a husband who she loves or one who would be the strongest king for the sake of her father. Sensei laughs at himself a little and says Charlotte is truly kind for worrying about what her father thinks to this extent, unlike Sensei, who has attempted to cancel his subscription to Life several times, always inconveniencing his family in the process. However, he has never once let someone else decide how he would live his life. He thinks Charlotte should make a decision based on what she wants, and to do that, she must figure out what her true desires are. The next day, King Thomas is called Sensei and the others to the throne room again, and he apologizes for the inconvenience, but he called them here because Charlotte is finally decided who she will marry, so he wants them to act as a witness to her choice. Annette thinks Charlotte will surely marry Gomes since she is likely to put the needs of the kingdom above her own, while Catgirl thinks Otto is a much better match for her. Thomas tells Charlotte to go up to the man she has chosen and to speak her vows to him. So Charlotte begins walking, however, instead of turning to Otto or Gomes, she grabs hold of Sensei's hand and says she wishes to drown in the lake with him. No one can believe what they just heard, especially Annette, who collapses to the ground. Charlotte goes on to explain her reasons, and after talking with Sensei last night, she thought about who to choose for a long time, and that led her to realize something. While initially she was leaning towards picking Otto since he always sang to her when she felt sad, she now recalls that he sang to her even when she wasn't sad, and he was even singing last night as well, and he never said he was in love with her. So he probably just wanted to perform his newest song for someone, and Charlotte just happened to be available to listen. And Gomes is a no-go as well since he smells awful. The king asks Charlotte to reconsider and choose a husband, which seems like an odd thing to be worried about after she declared her intentions to kick the bucket with Sensei. Charlotte snaps back at Thomas and tells him that it was a foolish idea to make her marry someone without asking for her opinion since she never even wanted to get married in the first place. In the end, Thomas never stopped to consider her feelings at all, but Sensei actually cared about what she thought and respected that it was her decision to make. Sensei now understands why Charlotte chose him, but before he can give her a response, Gomes takes off his helmet and says he never would have thought his cover would be blown because of his smell. He then transforms into his true form as a servant of the Dark Lord, and he says he had intended to acquire this kingdom by becoming its king so that he could eventually hand it over to the Dark Lord, but his plan has been ruined since Charlotte saw through his disguise. Sensei looks over to Charlotte and asks her if she had figured out Gomes was a demon, but she had no idea whatsoever. She just said he smelled because he really does stink. That means Gomes just blew his cover for no reason, but he doesn't want to admit that he was mistaken, so now that his cover is blown, he says he will just kill them all. This is the exact kind of situation where a powerful priestess would be really helpful, but she is still currently unconscious, so Catgirl tries waking her up while Gomes is distracted with the guards. Unfortunately, the guards don't last very long, so Catgirl is forced to grab Annette's body and run to avoid being crushed by a pillar. Since Annette won't be waking up anytime soon, Catgirl decides to take matters into her own hands and fight Gomes herself. She is currently level 14, so she should be able to handle herself while in a fight. Since she'll be fighting, Otto offers to play her a song since he's level 89 and normally a buff would be applied to her. But it turns out that Otto is just playing his newest song and has no effects attached to it, other than it being a certified HUD classic according to Sensei. Catgirl has no other choice but to begin attacking on her own. So as Gomes charges at her, Catgirl ducks underneath and kicks him across the face. She then follows it up with a cat punch, but it didn't really do much damage to Gomes, so he's able to send Catgirl flying. He then says he will put everything he has into his next attack and tear Catgirl to shreds. But before he does that, Sensei gets his attention and asks Gomes to please eliminate him and Charlotte first. Gomes doesn't think Sensei is serious at first, but Sensei reiterates that now that Charlotte is broken free from her idiotic father's control, her first wish is to end it all alongside Sensei, and Sensei is always up for a good chance to kick the bucket, so he asks Gomes to grant him this favor. Gomes agrees to kill him, but he says that after he does that, he will go on to kill the king, and then he will burn the city to the ground while killing every last citizen inside it. Sensei doesn't really care what Gomes does since she'll be dead by then anyway, but Charlotte is starting to have second thoughts about dying. As Gomes begins charging at them, she tells Sensei that she can't let herself die yet since she wants to stay alive and protect the kingdom. Sensei is glad to hear that Charlotte finally understands what she really wants, so since she wants to stay alive, he pushes her out of the way so that he's the only one who will be pulverized. As Gomes continues to charge straight at Sensei, Charlotte tries to convince him not to let himself get impaled, but luckily, at the same time, Anna had just woken up and she uses her power to cast a barrier of light in front of Sensei and shield him from Gomes' strike. She has vowed not to let Sensei die as long as she's by his side. So as Gomes tries to break through her shield, he ends up shattering his corns in the process, and now that Gomes' defenseless Catgirl is able to land a blow that sends him flying through the castle wall and into the lake. Both Catgirl and Annette are relieved that they managed to survive, and since Annette really helped her out during the battle, Catgirl feels the need to thank her. Annette thanks Catgirl as well for her help, and the two of them seem to be getting along a lot better now. And Otto is still here, just playing his harp without a care in the world. Charlotte has a lot to think about after what just happened, but suddenly her father runs up to her and starts begging for forgiveness for not considering her feelings earlier. Sensei was right when he said Thomas isn't fit to be king, and he now realizes that he's not even fit to be Charlotte's father, so he sincerely asks Charlotte if she's willing to forgive him. Charlotte gets down and tells her father that she forgives him, and from now on, she would like to talk to him a lot about the future of this kingdom and themselves. Thomas is really happy that he was able to reconcile with Charlotte, and Charlotte is happy her father finally understands her, but all Sensei can think of is how Annette and Catgirl messed up his perfect chance to get game over. But while later Thomas acknowledged that he wasn't fit to rule as king, so he advocated the throne to Charlotte, who now does everything in her power to make sure the kingdom is kept safe. And Otto is still making psalms since he's got nothing better to do. Meanwhile, Annette and Catgirl are busy driving Sensei's coffin to their next destination, and they are talking about how bold it was for Charlotte to become the queen at the age of 16, but they are sure it will work out somehow. Sensei gets out of the coffin and says what's important is that Charlotte made the decision for herself and she is standing by it, which is something that Sensei thinks is beautiful. This was the end of episode 2. Subscribe to not miss the next part.